Lets it fly. R-I-D-I-C-U-L-O-U-S. Ridiculous.
They're going to have to trade the run for the out. The throw over to third. Ball game.
Wow. The fifth year to try and put it away with an ace. That's a storybook ending.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back for episode 30 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Last week was another Fantasy Football Friday and the MLB Divisional Round predictions. These divisional series are in full swing, no pun intended, and I'm so here for it. These have been awesome so far. I also hope you liked the new intro from the last couple of weeks. I believe I might have used the second soundbite in one of my older intros, so if that's the case, I apologize. I really can't even keep everything straight at this point with as much tape as I have out there, which is a good problem to have. I'm going to start this one off with some rules and how I think everything that the NFL's commissioner, Roger Goodell, has ever done is bad. Not really, and of course, it's not all his fault, but I do think that the Rules Committee needs to reevaluate the dynamic kickoff for next year. Then we'll talk about the Jets canning their head coach, Robert Saleh, the fallout, and what other head coaches could be next. Finally, I'll update you on the MLB Divisional Series that have wrapped up and where the last couple sit heading into Game 5s. So I've done some rules talk before. Mostly it had been unwritten rules. This time I'm going to talk about a very big, notable written one. This is a layup. It's the NFL's dynamic kickoff. It might be the most dramatic change ever made to special teams, at least all at once in one offseason. All the things it was billed to be, that it was supposed to be, have just been so meh. What did those things include? The league wanted to make the return look more like a typical play from scrimmage. I think special teams coordinators have actually done a really good job with this one. Blocking schemes on kickoff are becoming a lot more like run plays. Brett Coleman is a fantastic football YouTuber that recently made a video on this. Recommend you go check him out. Have these actually made kick returns that much better, as measured by things like excitement over them? Average return distance, percentage of touchbacks? No, unfortunately, not a chance. The return rate was supposed to go up, and it has a little bit. Recall that last year was the lowest percentage on record at 21.8%. It was looking in the preseason like that number was going to soar. It was around 70% then, but in the first 5 weeks of the regular season, not nearly so much. If you did a confidence test, for all of my statistics people out there, I don't think the difference would be statistically significant. The rate across the league is right around 30% now for the year. Second lowest return rate in history. Wouldn't you know it, there was only one return touchdown for the year heading into this Thursday night football game. Then the Seahawks' Laviska Shenault just had the second one, going 97 yards, and only 4 other returns on the year have even gone for 50 yards or more. The injury rate is just as much a point of emphasis from the league with the rule change as well. I just read an NBC Sports article recently trying to find a number for this injury rate on the kickoffs, and it did help me understand a little bit. They quoted the NFL's executive VP for health and safety, who is probably not a popular man at all. There are reasons why it should work, right? Nobody can get a flying start the same way. That means, by the claims of the article, the average speed of a player on kickoffs now is 20% slower than it used to be. I think there's only so much more that anyone can say about the kickoffs until we get a full year of data as well as film on it. I don't believe it's ultimately going to stick, the whole dynamic kickoff idea, at least not the way it is now. The Rams are a team that's trying to prove that to me. They have the highest percentage of touchbacks kicked this year out of any team at 96%. They haven't done a huge quantity of kicking because they haven't scored a ton of points, so I'm guessing that's only 1 or 2 returns allowed the entire year. There's just not that much of a drawback to putting the other offense at the 30-yard line when you kick it through the end zone. Next year, they're talking about moving the touchback spot back to the 35. I think this is possibly the saving grace of the entire idea. It'll just give each offensive drive too good of a chance at scoring points if you stick to kicking touchbacks and every time that offense starts at the 35. Time will tell, but I don't see the dynamic kickoff as a huge success yet. And now for the kick a man while he's down moment of the week, the New York Football Jets. They could get on this list for something just about every single week, to be honest with you. They just fired their head coach, Robert Saleh, this week. They left London last Sunday after losing to the Vikings 23-17. Let's think about this game a little bit. 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers throws 3 picks, including one to seal it with 49 seconds left. This isn't fully about Aaron Rodgers, but we'll get to why all the context matters in a moment. Rodgers throws a back shoulder fade to Mike Williams, who came over from the Chargers this offseason. He threw it too short and inside, and Stephon Gilmore picked it off from his back for career interception number 32. Aaron knows better, and there's just a lot of plays like that the whole year where he tries to do a little bit too much. The numbers aren't even bad. 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 61% completions, 1,093 yards in 5 games. Now, what everyone has to accept, even Aaron Rodgers himself, is he is finally an average quarterback. Tom Brady never got to that point, even sticking around and playing until 45. Now Aaron's injuries are piling up worse than ever, and he's never going to get back to his prime. Now, to circle around, the most unfortunate part about Robert Saleh being fired is how many people are saying Aaron Rodgers actually had a big hand in it. Not a chance, in my opinion. Things to think about and that people have argued. You could see visually how tense the relationship between them was on the sideline during every game, even just in the brief glimpses that you get during a telecast. Compare that to how much Mike McDaniel and Tua with the Dolphins truly love each other, and how cold and kind of sharp Rodgers and Saleh always were with each other. When you know that you have zero margin for error, like the Jets have had recently, they have to be that way. They currently can't run the ball. Their play calling has been a problem for, well, a long time, and they're now changing their offensive play caller as well. Their owner, Woody Johnson, pulled the trigger to get rid of Saleh, and it all came down to winning football games. Nothing else makes sense to explain this whole scenario. There's lots of good news here in a way. Robert Saleh's only 45, and he will get another chance, but it's always tough to guess if that'll be as a head coach. He's going to take the rest of this season off, he already announced, spend time with his family. Of course, that's always a good decision. I have no doubt that next year he could be an above-average defensive coordinator. He's already been that with the 49ers from 2017 to 2020. He was even an assistant with the Legion of Boom in Seattle when they won a Super Bowl. The facts with his career. Saleh has never had a good offense to make him look better. He has a career record of 20-36 as a head coach, and unfortunately he's never won more than 7 games in a season. He would need a much better staff and front office all around him to try and get to that next level, because that helps you build a better team, hit on the draft, bring in great free agents. And the Jets never tried to give him pretty much any of that besides 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Now let's ponder who's the next to go. I'll give you the most arbitrary rating I can think of and call it something like the hot seat score. I don't know. I'll be the first one to tell you that the Dolphins' Mike McDaniel is going nowhere. I can't believe he's been getting criticized so harshly while not having Tua and half of his other starters being injured. Reasons to keep McDaniel around. He is the number 1 most relatable coach in the league by far. He's hilarious. The Dolphins were the best offense in the league statistically last year, and they made the playoffs. He's well over 500 in the regular season. McDaniel deserves arguably less blame among all teams that aren't doing so hot than any other head coach. 0 out of 10, Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins not going anywhere. Now to another Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys. Honestly, I hope he is the next one to get axed, but I doubt it. He's been a head coach since 2006. He had an incredible run with Aaron Rodgers in the Packers. All credit to them. They even won a Super Bowl, but nothing has come together since he came to Dallas in 2020. He has 1 playoff win in that time. It's better than a lot of coaches can say, But with the amount of talent on that roster for the past 5 years, it's something of a joke. I think he is the worst underachiever in the league at head coach. Every year they've been loaded, and they put together really good regular seasons. In fact, they've been 12-5 for 3 straight years in a row. Doesn't matter at all. Now, Dallas is finally down on talent, in large part due to a ton of injuries to their starting defense. They have to admit that they can't win with Mike McCarthy and move on, possibly before this year is over. I don't think it's actually going to happen. Like I say, I do hope he's the next to go, but I'm going to say 4 out of 10 lukewarm seat for Mike McCarthy. 2 guys that I would put on the same level, about a 6 out of 10 toasty seat, are the Panthers' Dave Canales and the Jaguars' Doug Peterson. 2 guys both inherited number 1 overall picks at quarterback, being Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence. Bryce Young is currently benched, and Trevor Lawrence is just too average, although I don't think he's going to be benched this year. These teams have identical 1-4 records, and yet the Panthers have dramatically less talent. It's not a great look for either guy. They were both good offensive coordinators in other places around the league before becoming head coaches, and they would probably do a much better job if they could just go back to that role. Yeah, 6 out of 10 for each of them, just because they're not with great teams and things aren't going hot this year. And the number 1 hottest seat in the NFL belongs to the Eagles' Nick Sirianni. Think back to Week 12 of last year. Now, I didn't remember the exact point either where things really went wrong, but I went back and read about it. Sirianni's first 3 years were great, and they almost won the Super Bowl 2 years ago against the Chiefs. The Eagles were 10-1 heading into Week 12 of last year, pretty much on top of the world. Since then, they are 3-8 with a blowout loss in last year's wildcard game against the Bucs. The Eagles are now coming off their bye week, and they do have a cupcake schedule the next 4 games, at least on paper. Browns, Giants, Bengals, Jaguars. If they don't win at least 3 of 4 right there, I bet Sirianni is gone by mid-season. It's so many things with him. It's clock management, decisions on 4th downs. It's the fact that he left the hiring of the offensive and defensive coordinators to the GM instead of choosing himself. I don't know this for certain, but I think he is the only one out of 32 active head coaches to have done that. That's really, really uncommon. It's even the very uncomfortable, strained relationship with their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. If one thing goes wrong for the Eagles anytime soon, I fully believe Nick Sirianni is gone. 8 out of 10 hot seat. He is actively getting scorched. Now, there are other guys around the league that might be fired at the end of the year just for not winning enough games. But the guys on this list should already have their vacations planned and should update their resumes looking for some new jobs. And now time for the MLB Divisional round. I got to start with the number 1 thing I got the most wrong because I still sort of don't believe my eyes. The Mets and Phillies series ended almost the opposite of how I thought. 3-1 in the opposite direction that I expected. The Mets scored 6 runs in each of the first 3 games, and then Phillies stars and all of their seasoned vets that were supposed to carry them were noticeably too quiet. The Phillies' only win in the series came down to a 7-6 walk-off hit from Nick Castellanos, and New York made all of the other late game and 2-out rallies in the series. You just can't teach clutch. You kind of have it or you don't. Philly had the best regular season record, so you have to call them the biggest disappointment of the year. You know who was never supposed to get to this point, so you shouldn't be disappointed at all? Who had a 56-106 record last year, who hadn't been better than 500 since 2015? The Kansas City Royals. They deserve a ton of credit for everything that they did this year. They ran that whole chaotic AL Central race, and even though they didn't finish out the season on the highest note, they had enough wins banked up from before the All-Star break. What went wrong with the Royals? I kind of believe the answer is nothing. They just met a more talented Yankees team. that was heading into October with more momentum to begin with. It's tough to get closed out at home, but I think in all likelihood, the Royals are going to get back here next year. I imagine Cleveland is going to start regressing. Their core is going to get a little bit older. The Twins are, of course, in shambles. If you look at the real talented young core that the Tigers and the Royals are both sort of built on, I think that they should both be in the playoff next year, right? Bobby Witt Jr., the Royals' all-everything shortstop, he will almost certainly be the MVP runner-up. He did only hit 192 in the playoff run, and maybe people want to gripe about that. It doesn't change how much of a superstar he is. The only way to get over that sort of disappointment is to get right back there next year and succeed, and I fully expect that to happen for the Royals. In the end, both of the New York teams were the ones that came up with all the clutch hits and are moving on. Giancarlo Stanton was the best player on the field for the Yankees. That's wild. Nobody's said that in years. He hit .375 in the series. He had a home run, 4 RBIs, even a stolen base. Aaron Judge, who of course will be the AL MVP, only hit 2 for 13. Look, he can wipe his tears with his MVP trophy when he gets it. I will always kind of hate the Yankees' team-building strategy of just printing money, throwing it at players, and that directly translating into wins, but it works. They should probably be the World Series favorite, I would guess, but they do need Judge and Juan Soto to get some big hits each. Probably a couple home runs. Garrett Cole has been their number one and their ace for 5 years now, and he totally knew what to do with the opportunity to close out KC. 7 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, no walks. Padres-Dodgers Game 5 is this Friday night, and Tigers-Guardians Game 5 is Saturday afternoon. The Padres and my gritty Tigers both had a chance to close out the series at home in Game 4s, and neither could do it. It's definitely panic time. The difference between those two Game 4s is San Diego got absolutely rocked 8-0, and the Tigers fought back and forth the entire time, scoring another run off the best closer in the league, Emmanuel Clase, and coming up barely short 5-4. There's good news for anybody who loves great starting pitching. The Tigers will have Tarek Skubal throwing Game 5. The Padres and Dodgers are going to have Yu Darvish and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. The Guardians are still TBD, but truly these matchups for Game 5 should both be awesome. So with all of that said, I have to change up my World Series picks again. Like I said, I might have to do this every round, but that's October baseball. I believe in my gritty Tigers so fully with Skubal on the mound for Game 5. But if they do get through, I think they might run out of gas against New York. Their bullpen games are so fun, so quirky, but eventually somebody's going to put some consecutive quality at-bats together and get a few runs off of the bullpen. When that does happen, I just don't know that they can put up enough offense to keep up. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong. What are my new World Series thoughts? If I had the NL narrowed down by one team, I'd feel a lot better about it. But for now, I'm going to say Yankees over the Padres in 6. If it is the Dodgers, however, who get through to face the Yankees, I'm actually going to go with them over New York in 5. Especially if Freddie Freeman comes back, gets in the lineup, and produces in that World Series. And that's where the MLB postseason stands for now. Remember the Thursday night football prediction I made last week that the Bucs and the Falcons offenses would absolutely light it up and give us the game of the year? I was so close on the exact score and the total. I just got to share this. I said 34-31 Atlanta, and it ended up being 36-30 in overtime. That game was nuts, and Kirk Cousins had the game of his life with over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. On the same night, the Falcons were inducting Matt Ryan into their Ring of Honor. Way to steal the show. It was one of those games that reaffirms how awesome the entire game of football is. The Thursday night football game from last night saw the Niners take down the Seahawks 36-24. The Niners rushed for 228. Threw for 255. That balance is incredible. They didn't turn the ball over at all. Seahawks turned it over 3 times. That tells you the biggest part of what you need to know about that game. The Niners moved to 3-3. The Seahawks fall to 3-3. This was a divisional game that will probably mean a lot to the final NFC West standings, and it was a pretty good one. The last game I was able to peruse a little bit, WNBA Finals Game 1. The Minnesota Lynx absolutely storming back. They were down 15 in the fourth quarter, ended up winning that one 95-93 in overtime. That's one of the great WNBA shootouts ever, and they should go to a best-of-7 series instead of best-of-5. I hear that is the plan for next year, and that's pretty exciting. It, again, just speaks to the explosive growth of the league and how much demand there finally is for it. I'm down. Remember, you can always feel free to hit me on my socials if you have an idea for me. Instagram and TikTok at The Voice of Tanner. Connect on LinkedIn. And as always, leave a like, comment, and share. This has been episode 30 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
Pointing upfield, lets it fly. RIDICULOUS. Ridiculous.
They're going to have to trade the run for the out. The throw over to third. Ball game.
The fifth year to try and put it away with an ace. That's a storybook ending.